Hi, Purple Ella here. Today I want to talk to you about how to use the time whilst you are waiting for an autism assessment. Now, unfortunately, in the UK, current waiting times for an autism assessment are quite high. I had a look online to see if I could find an average, but unfortunately I couldn't. But I did find examples where people have been waiting for more than 2 years for their assessment. So this might be whilst you wait for an assessment for yourself as an adult, or whilst you wait for an assessment for your child. Both areas currently hold long waiting times. So I thought it might be a good idea to make a video about what you can be doing during that time while you are waiting for the assessment. So it's a really tricky time because you might find that you're feeling waver from day to day. I know that for me personally, whilst I was waiting for myself and whilst I was waiting for my children's assessment, I would veer from I'm almost entirely certain that they are, or I am, autistic, to oh look, they're doing something that's completely typical, that must mean that they're not autistic at all, which can be a really confusing time because you're doubting yourself, you haven't got that professional confirmation that there is autism, and you're really not sure what the best thing to do is to support yourself or to support your child. So that's where I thought I would come in. The first thing that I would say is a useful thing to do whilst you're waiting for that assessment is to find out more about autism. I loved researching autism when I first suspected I might be autistic, and not in the way where it would influence any kind of a professional assessment, because they really do know what they're looking for, and as long as you're honest, then it shouldn't impact upon that. But I found that researching autism and the different presentations of autism and watching YouTubers and reading blogs and reading the National Autistic Society website and reading books and reading magazines and everything I could get my hand on about not just the science around autism, the neurology around autism, and also people's personal experiences, but also the kinds of strategies that had worked for people that had autism or had autistic children. So that's the next point, really. Once you've done that research, here's the thing that I didn't feel confident about when my children were waiting for an assessment. It's okay to try strategies designed for autistic children even before you have that diagnosis, because a lot of those strategies would potentially work for any child in terms of clear boundaries and routine and being aware of difficulties around change, and they certainly won't hurt. So I would say what I would do during the time that I was waiting is identify the areas that were most difficult. So for me, that was having meltdowns, having sensory overload, and feeling very, very low in my self-esteem. So it was okay for me to work on those things ahead of having that confirmation of a diagnosis. And I suppose that's the key thing. If there are difficulties, they are real, regardless of whether or not you've had a diagnosis to label those difficulties. Some people have health problems which never end up getting diagnosed because they are so rare or for whatever reason, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. I think that the whole idea that there has to be a label for something to exist is completely ridiculous. So, find out what the areas of difficulty are, research strategies that might work, and try them, and maybe you'll already have begun to improve the day-to-day experience of that person before you've even gotten as far as needing an assessment. On that same note, things like benefits, educational healthcare plans, EHCPs, top-up funding in schools, those three things for sure are not diagnosis dependent. So if your child has significant enough additional needs in school that they need top-up funding or they need an EHCP, and if you're not sure what that is, talk to the school SENCO to find out whether they do have those kinds of needs, you can still get disability living allowance and an EHCP and top-up funding without a diagnosis. I'm not going to say you can easily get, because no one can easily get these things, diagnosis or not, but if you can prove that that need exists and that that's what you need for it, that is the requirement, not the diagnosis. So feel free to go ahead and apply for any benefits or any provision in school. That's the other thing, put into one side EHCPs. Before my children were diagnosed, I was already working with the SENCO on what their difficulties were in school and how we could address that. So basically, I guess all of this is saying Don't feel you have to wait for a diagnosis before you can practice the care needed to live that life that suits you or your child. So yes, essentially, live the best life for you or your child before you even have that diagnosis, because why would you wait 2 years, 3 years to try and make life better for some official professional to say, oh yes, these problems that you know are there and you can see exist are in fact real and have a name. You don't need that like validation from a professional to change your life or to change your child's life. So feel free to go to autism conferences, to watch autistic speakers, to take strategies, to look at the best kinds of lives that support our neurology. And I have a lot of videos, if you check out my channel generally, where I talk about various different aspects and various different strategies. Feel free to take all of that and find what works for you. It's not right that you have to wait so long for an assessment. It's not ideal. But if you can hold on to the fact that you don't need some professional who doesn't know your child or doesn't know you to tell you that what you know to be true is true, and you can give yourself permission to do what needs to be done before that diagnosis, then I think that that's all for the better, because it's empowering. And I think that's the thing. You need to feel empowered without the professional stamp of approval, unfortunately, in the current climate that we live in, where diagnosis is not a straightforward or a quick path. So, I hope that this video has been helpful for you. If you did enjoy it, do leave me a thumbs up. Do feel free to share your experiences of waiting for diagnosis and the impact that had on you. Maybe you're still waiting for diagnosis and you'd like to talk about that. Please leave me a comment in the comment box below. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, click the subscribe button and help support the work that I'm trying to do here. Thanks for watching. Bye!